What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Your guy, Cody here. And, well, guys, we are kind of right in the middle of no man's land for the Indianapolis Colts. Although OTAs did start this past week, not a ton to talk about really until training camp for the next couple months. So, with that being said, I wanted to kind of do a little bit of a recap of the Colts offseason. We've already done an actual recap, so if you haven't, be sure to go check that out. But today, what I really would love to do is I did this last year, would love to place the Colts moves. This is free agency moves and also draft moves and put them into tiers. And I have three different tiers in mind. Tier number 3 is kind of the depth / bench guys, the guys that probably aren't going to see a ton of time. Tier number 2 is what you would label as potential starters or maybe role players. So guys that maybe will challenge for starting spots, but if not, certainly will play some snaps for the Indianapolis Colts. And there's going to be different positions where the Colts like to use a lot of different players. For example, like the running back position, the Colts are going to use a few different players, maybe even like defensive back, maybe even defensive line. So just a couple examples there, but that is tier number 2. And then tier number 1 is the instant impact guys. And these are the guys that you really are going to say they're going to come in from day one. They're going to be starters, and they're going to make a big immediate impact for this team. So with that being said, let's jump right into today. And we'll start here with tier number 3 and work our way up to tier number 1. So for tier number 3, the Indianapolis Colts, I have really only one free agent in mind that the Indianapolis Colts brought in that I believe is kind of going to be just for depth. And to me, that is Corey Ballantyne, the cornerback the Colts brought in. Really hasn't seen a ton of time in his NFL career with some starts. He's had a couple, but really has been kind of a career backup special teams guy. So that's kind of what I'm envisioning him and his role is going to be if he does make the roster, is to be kind of a backup special teams guy, because the Indianapolis Colts did lose a number of guys who played key special teams roles for them a year ago. So Corey Ballantyne definitely has some prowess on special teams. So he is kind of the only free agent I would necessarily say is just a depth piece here. And we'll see if he does make the roster, because as you'll notice, and we've talked about it a lot, this cornerback room is deep on deep. So yeah, Corey Ballantyne, the only notable free agent here that I'm going to have here on tier number 3. Then moving on to the draft. For me, guys, I look at 4 different players for the Indianapolis Colts. And really, when I look at this, it's pretty much all later round draft picks outside of maybe one, and that's Jaylen Travis. Now, do I think Jaylen Travis will have a role? Yes, I do. I think he has a potential to be the swing tackle for you. He's going to have to compete for that position, so it's not just going to get handed to him, but he has the chance to compete for there. But like I said a little bit ago, like offensive line, ideally he doesn't see the field. Now, obviously, if some injuries happen, he's obviously going to go up a tier or 2 for sure, especially if it's an extended sort of injury. But yeah, definitely for me, as it stands right now, you already have your 2 starting offensive tackles. And even with that, Jaylen Travis, not 100% guaranteed that he is going to be the next tackle up. He's definitely going to have to earn it during training camp. So Jaylen Travis there for me, the first guy of the draft picks in tier number 3. Like I said, this one probably out of any of them is probably the most subject to change if an injury does happen, because there's a good chance then he has the Matt Gonsalves, Tanner Bortolini treatment where, boom, you're on the field, man, and you got to figure it out. But as it stands right now, he's going to stay on tier number 3. Now, 2 other guys I want to point to, both 6th-round picks, actually back-to-back picks for the Indianapolis Colts. You had Riley Leonard, the quarterback. I think he's going to be primarily kind of in that Sam Ehlinger role. He's going to be that 3rd or 4th quarterback. Again, he's going to have to earn that. He's going to be facing off against Jason Bean. So he's not guaranteed that spot. And I think at best he's QB3, and ideally he doesn't see the field at all. He probably doesn't even dress on game day a lot of times. So Riley Leonard for that reason right there. And then also looking at Tim Smith. Now, this would be the other guy that I would say, depending on what happens with this defensive line in the interior, I could kind of go both ways. He could potentially go up a tier as well, especially if, Neville Gallimore, who we'll talk about here in a minute, doesn't do what he was brought in to do. And you really are lacking depth there right now at that position. So I'm going to keep him there right now because right now he kind of factors in as that fourth defensive lineman in the interior. And there's some other guys as well that you could throw in there. So I don't really know what his role is right now. But again, if he comes in and balls out, he really could have a role here this year, but we'll have to see on that. So that's why I have it there right now. And then the final guy I want to point to as well is Hunter Wohler, the Colts 7th-round pick out of Wisconsin. I'll be very fascinated to see where he does play. Is he a linebacker? Is he a safety? Does he play a little bit of both? But nonetheless, he's not going to see the field most likely, unless obviously some other things happen. But Hunter Wohler right now, just kind of a depth piece in there. But, we've seen the Indianapolis Colts before find these late round guys, especially at linebacker, that can play some significant roles. So who's to say? But right now, I'm just going to keep Hunter Wohler on this tier as well. But that leads me into tier number 2 for the Indianapolis Colts. And a good majority of their free agent signings were falling in this category. Got to start with Daniel Jones. I mean, history would tell you that Daniel Jones is likely going to see the field, especially if Anthony Richardson does get injured. But again, Daniel Jones has an opportunity here to potentially come in and be a tier 1 type of guy, because if he does beat Anthony Richardson out and he is the starter, then for better or for worse, he's going to have an impact. So that one's kind of contingent on how this QB battle does kind of figure itself out here in the next coming months. But right now, I'm going to keep Daniel Jones on tier number 2, knowing very well he could jump to tier number 1 really, really quickly. All right, a couple other guys I want to highlight as well. Khalil Herbert's another name that I would definitely throw in there as well. The running back for the Indianapolis Colts, who the Colts signed in free agency, who was with the Chicago Bears the last couple of years and had been pretty efficient. So I'd be curious to see what his role is. And then, of course, DJ Giddens as well. Like, what are these guys behind Jonathan Taylor? What does that role for them look like? And we'll have to kind of see. But I think both these running backs definitely have a purpose here. I think they definitely will contribute in some way. And if you can help JT get a few snaps off, stay healthier down the stretch, you're going to say that's going to be worth it. So both those running backs, Khalil Herbert, DJ Giddens, both on these lists, I think both provide something that you're looking for if you're the Indianapolis Colts behind Jonathan Taylor. Now, another guy I already mentioned, and actually 2 guys on the defensive line I will talk about. Neville Gallimore is the first name. I mean, really has been an underwhelming player for the majority of his career, but last year in the playoffs for the Rams, he had some really strong performances. So Indianapolis obviously hoping that he can build off of that and become a key backup piece. But we'll have to see on that. And then the other guy I'll throw in there, just because we know how much the Colts like to rotate their defensive ends, is JT Tuimuluau as well. And I think he has definitely a chance here. Well, I don't think he's going to be a starter. I think he's going to have a chance here to compete for some playing time, because Samson Ebukam, you don't really know what the nature of that injury is right now for him. He's still recovering at this point, and we'll see if he's the same player. And if not, and if maybe, Tyquan Lewis is just kind of a role guy, this could potentially open up an opportunity here for JTT to have a significant role with this team. I mean, he was very productive last year for Ohio State from both a tackle for loss perspective and just a sack perspective as well. So if he can come in and, really impress early on, I think he definitely will have a role of some sort. And again, he doesn't have to be a quote unquote starter, but he'll have a role in some capacity, in that rotation. So JTT, another name there. And then the final guy I'll throw in here, and this guy's kind of the big wild card for me in this draft class, is Justin Walley. And, I talked about how the Indianapolis Colts cornerback room, it's so deep right now. But one thing I think to consider that potentially could be in Justin Walley's favor is, outside of one other player who we'll talk about, he is the only other notable guy that's a Lou Anarumo pick, right? He's the only other guy that Lou Anarumo has handpicked for this defense, right? Because every other corner on this room, outside of, obviously, just mentioned it, the guy we'll talk about in a minute, outside of that, and obviously Corey Ballantyne, who's probably just going to be a special teams guy. I mean, we really look at it, Justin Walley potentially could have the upper hand there. because there's a lot of other players in here. I do think Jalen Jones will still have a spot there at that number 2 outside corner. But beyond that, when you're looking at some of the other depth guys, you have Juju Brents, who was a Gus Bradley pick. He's been injured for the last couple of years. And you have a guy like Samuel Womack, who was a waiver claim last year and on the last year of his deal. So, again, I don't know what the role's going to be, but I do think Justin Walley could have a role here, especially with the Colts talking about the fact that they are going to play a lot more defensive backs on the field this year as opposed to last year. There's got to be a lot more of 5-6 DBs on the field. So that could open up the opportunity for a guy like Justin Walley to have a role in this defense early on. Again, he's going to have to go out there and compete just like everybody else. But I think the fact that he was definitely a hand-picked Lou Anarumo pick, and the fact that, he's got everything you're looking for, and really outside of your top 3 corners, it's wide open right now from a depth perspective. So we'll have to see on that, but I definitely think Justin Walley could have a role here early on this defense. And so moving into tier number 1, this is kind of what I talk about, the instant impact guys, right? The guys that I really believe are going to have a big impact from day one. There's not going to be any doubts on their playing time. They're going to be in. They're going to potentially be like cornerstone pieces for your franchise. And really, I point to 3 different guys here for the Indianapolis Colts. The 2 defensive backs the Colts brought in free agency, that, of course, being Charvarius Ward, the cornerback from the 49ers, and Cam Bynum, the free safety from the Minnesota Vikings. Those 2 guys are definitely going to have an impact, and you definitely needed a facelift if you were the Indianapolis Colts DB room. So the Colts definitely made a huge emphasis this offseason from a coaching perspective and just a personnel perspective to drastically improve that group. So I do think both these players, Ward and Bynum, are going to be big upgrades from what the Colts had a year ago, and potentially probably the best corner and free safety the Colts have had in the last decade, honestly. It's been that long for the Indianapolis Colts. I would say certainly for Ballard, the potential to be the best players at that position he's drafted for sure. So, yeah, we'll have to see on that. And then the last guy is the most obvious guy. That's going to be Tyler Warren, the Indianapolis Colts first-round pick this year out of Penn State. I mean, Tyler Warren, we knew the tight end room was a mess last year. You needed an alpha in there. You needed a guy that was going to come in and was going to be the guy that gets the majority of the snaps. Basically, you needed that workhorse. You had it with JT. You've had it with some of your receivers, but you just didn't have that from a tight end perspective. It was a lot of by committee. Didn't work at all. Your tight ends were one of the worst in the NFL last year. You needed an alpha. So what happened? The Indianapolis Colts were able to somehow, some way, get Tyler Warren to fall to them, and he's going to project right away as an instant impact guy. And frankly, the best tight end you've had in a long, long time. I mean, Jack Doyle was a solid tight end, but Tyler Warren has the potential to be probably the best tight end from the Colts since, honestly, Dallas Clark. He really, really projects really well and such a good overall player. And obviously, quarterback needs to get him the football, but we've already heard it from early OTA stuff. He's already impressing. So Tyler Warren's such a monster at Penn State last year, over 100 catches, and was just a beast all the way around. So he has a definite instant impact here for this Indianapolis Colts offense. So that really does it here, guys, for sort of the tier list here for the Indianapolis Colts offseason. So again, 3 different tiers. Again, tier number 3, more depth bench guys. Tier number 2, potential starters / role players who could see some times but maybe aren't listed as the starter. And then the instant impact guys with tier number 1. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. But that'll do it for this one, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you haven't already, be sure to smash that like button, hit subscribe, turn on that notification bell. Even though, guys, it's kind of in the dead period for the Indianapolis Colts, we got you covered, so you definitely want to be a part of what we were doing over here. But be sure to do all those things, guys, and let's know your thoughts here on some of the moves the Colts have made this offseason, and if you agree with my tier ranking. But again, guys, that'll do it for this one. Thank you so much for tuning in, and as always, guys, go Colts.